Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here, even though I am late. It happened. My bi-weekly ramblings were supposed to be up yesterday and I totally forgot that it was 2 weeks already because I did a video last weekend. It was just not my bi-weekly book ramblings, so oops. And this bi-weekly ramblings will also be a little bit of March TBR. I know March is already halfway over, but I still wanted to kind of mention it anyway and just talk about the books that I'm planning on reading. But before I dive deep into the March TBR and the books that I've read over the last 2 weeks, let's talk quickly about the Green Rider read-along. I know, shameless plug here, I have to talk about it. We're actually taking a break in the month of April because we wanted to give a couple of people a chance to catch up with book 2 and then get into book 3. So if you haven't joined yet and you were kind of on the fence of you should or not, because we are now 3 books in, do so, because now you have till the end of April to catch up to the end of book 3, and then in May we will continue with book 4, which is Black Veil. Last week, which is why I got confused, we had the live show for book 2, which was First Writer's Call. I was joined by Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads and Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And Amanda was supposed to be there too. She was in the chat though, so she was typing feverishly, but unfortunately she didn't have a voice. I mean, I hope you feel better by now. And given that we are now moving book 3 from March into March and April, the next live show will be towards the end of April, early May. We'll see about the time frame in particular. Talking about the Green Ride-Along, let's jump into the March TBR because, well, guess what? There will be a Green Rider book on my TBR. Book 3 is High King's Tomb, although now that we have April as kind of a catch-up month, I will probably read this book later in March, early April-ish. We'll see. Maybe I start in March and then move it into April. And I'll probably also try the audiobook again because I really like that for book 2. While we're talking about read-alongs, I'm still doing that buddy read together with Jake from the Bookish Drummer for all the Richard Bachman books. And in March, we are going to read Running Man, which is also a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I always need a second to think about how do you pronounce his last name in an American way, since I grew up with him with his German pronounced name. Does it make any sense? I don't know. A movie that I love, even though it is old and it's tacky and all those lot of things. But I'm looking forward to that after I've read the book, that I'm going to watch the movie, even though I know the movie is, while it, they relate, they are not very close. So they are different to each other. So when I planned out my 2022, I was thinking about a couple of series that I wanted to start throughout the year. And for March, I actually picked, I forgot, either Malazan or Empire of Silence, one of those. And then I saw someone on Shelf Space organizing a read-along for The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons, which is also a series that I wanted to read in 2022, but much later in the year. So yeah, here I am, switching things around because we're flexible, if not anything else. And I'm really looking forward to this one. It's also a chunker, but I'm excited about it. So I'm not reading it alone. It's a group of, 11 or 12 people on that Discord. So I'm really, really excited about it. Sorry about the glare. I'm really excited about that one because I've seen that a long time ago and I have the first 3 or 4 books on my shelves and I wanted to read it for a while, but for some reason, there's always something else that comes up. And since it is quite the commitment, I was always a bit scared, but now I'm really excited about it. And then I'm going to continue with the Chronicles of the Bitch Queen, which is a squirrel book that I picked up in February that was not at all on my list of books I want to read anytime soon, or series I want to read about anytime soon. But I decided to pick book 1 up in February, and then I started with book 2 in February, which is the Ikessar Falcon. That is book 2. And then so I continued that in March, and then I put The Dragon of Jin Sayeng also on my TBR, which is the final book in the trilogy. First of all, these covers. I'm really loving these covers of the series, and I'm loving the series. Seriously, this is a new favorite author. I already bought the other trilogy that is a self-published one by her, and cannot wait to dive into that one as well. I binged book 1 and book 2. I need a little break right now, so book 3 is not right after this one, but I want to read it in March still. So I just need, to break it up a little bit. I need a palate cleanser, if you will, and then I will continue with this one. And that is definitely my priority in March. And that moves us over into what I've read already in the first 2 weeks of March, because that was one of them. Since I started in February, so it moved into March. I like book 1 better, but it continues with the same strong character writing that I loved in book 1 so much. I think this one should have been 100 to 200 pages shorter. It was a little bit too drawn out for my taste, but it was still a very strong story, a very strong continuation, but it definitely, I think, suffers from the middle book syndrome. And I think there are some things that could have just been sped up, and you would have gotten the same thing out of the story at the end of the day. So book 2 continues with our main character, Queen Talien, who is in an enemy continent and is trying to survive there. And I don't want to spoil too much. You get a lot of that in the first book already, so I'm not spoiling anything. Like in the beginning of the first book, you hear about what happened and, how she ended up on the other continent. And book 2 continues with her journey and her trying to figure out who she can trust, and her learning more and more about the intrigue that is happening, that is trying to kick her off court, and what is happening with her son and what's happening with her husband, like all of those things. So there's a lot of angst going on. There's a lot of raw emotions, and I think K.S. Veloso did an amazing job writing about those emotions, especially considering that we're talking about the female leader of that other world. She needs to be a strong and fierce person, but you really learn in book 1 and book 2 that she is not. And you read about what she's struggling with, and you read about what she's conflicted with between herself and being the leader that the people need her to be. And then obviously all the intrigue stuff. It is so interesting. As I said when I briefly reviewed the first book, I don't think it's a series for anyone. So if you don't like character-driven work, this is definitely not the right book for you, because it is so character-focused. And then she also jumps a little bit into the past. She jumps a little bit she writes it from a future perspective about the past. And then there's like that main storyline, the now essentially, that she's having, but sometimes she jumps further back to explain some of the situations, why she's reacting the way she does. It's really fascinating how K.S. Veloso tied all of these things together and how she played with those timelines. And yeah, just seriously, a fantastic series, a fantastic author, a fantastic writer. And I cannot wait to see how she finishes this series out and how it ends and how everything comes together. And then I want to jump into the other series that, from what I've read, plays in the same world. And I love this world so much as well. So this is perfect. And then the other book that was on my TBR was actually my February TBR, and I moved it into March, but that I finally read is The Push by Ashley Audrain. And that book might have been the first book that I wanted to throw at someone really hard. I finished it yesterday night. I read it within a day, and I was so pissed at that husband. I cannot believe that this is... Okay, before I get there, real quick premise. So this was actually sold to me as a horror or a thriller type book. Jake from the Bookish Drama actually recommended that to me because he knew I loved Zoe's Stage and Baby Teeth in particular. And he said, like, hey, if you love that, this is similar. And while the premise is similar, I think the point that this book is trying to make is a very different one. So it is about a mother and a daughter who don't get along very well, and then things happen and you wonder, like, is it an evil child? And technically, yes, but there's just so much more to it. There's so many more layers to it. I wonder if it could have, with a different type of marketing, if more people could have found out about it and learned about some of the struggles that women face. And I'm saying that because I find it's more about that. So there are several aspects in here. So first of all, it's about depression. So she definitely deals with some sort of mental illness. My best guess would be depression. There might be other technical terms for that. But she comes from a really messed up family that dealt with multiple generations of motherly abuse. I'm saying that carefully because there was no physical abuse. It was just the mothers didn't love their daughters, and they left them at one point or another. And that left a mark on the mother that is the main character in this book, and she struggles with it. And there's nothing anyone does about it. Her husband doesn't do anything. Her husband doesn't recommend to her that she should do a therapy or something. Rather, he forces her into being a mother that she doesn't even want to be, at least at the beginning. And I find that very problematic because it is an issue anyway. For a lot of women, this whole social concept of you have to be a mother in order to be fulfilled is bogus in my book. I don't have children and never wanted children, and I'm fine. I have a very productive and very fulfilled life. I don't need children. I don't want a child. So, which doesn't mean no woman should have. It's not the opposite. It's just every woman should decide on their own outside of any societal, is that the right word? Pressures. And that book talks about this. It's one of the many layers that this book has as part of the depression that the main character deals with. So she's stuck in being a mother and just has a hard time building a relationship with her daughter. So that's why I don't think it's about an evil child, because of course you're getting messed up. If you feel that your mother doesn't love you, if your mother can't show affection in a way, you need it as a child, of course something happens again from a mental perspective, from a mental health perspective. And it's no wonder that there are things then happening and the child is trying her boundaries. So that is one of the big problems in this book. And then the other problem is that the husband of hers, because he has no clue. He has zero clue. She tells her and he just shrugs and moves on. It's like, yeah, you'll figure it out. It's not easy at the beginning, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is bullshit. You should be there for her. You should help her. You should listen to her and help her deal with that. And then do some sort of therapy or whatnot. And he doesn't. And it continues and it escalates to a point where, so trigger warning, by the way, there's death of a child in there involved, where several things happen and he continues to ignore her and tell her that she is making stuff up. And I don't think she is. I don't think she is making anything up in the book. It's just because he doesn't support her that she then thinks she is the failure. So he keeps telling her, like, you have to be a better mom, right? You have to take care of your child, blah, blah, blah. Don't grieve. You have to be there. And I'm not allowing my daughter to grieve either. And like a bunch of things are happening. And at the end of the day, it's not a spoiler because the prologue basically talks about it. At the end of the day, he leaves her for another woman and then builds a new family. And it's all about how he blames her. And I was so mad at him for that because it is just so wrong in a world where women struggle anyway that he is abusing his position as someone who should protect her to blame her for things that are actually not necessarily her fault, that he could have helped fix. You know what I mean? Sorry, I went kind of on a rant there. And that's why, I gave this book 5 stars, right? It sounds like I'm mad and I hate this book. I don't. I think she wrote something incredible and important and dramatic and something that needs to be pointed out. And that book was a 5-star read for me because she was also to the point. There was no, talking around the bush. There was no trying to make it better than it is. She was very straightforward in her writing and very to the point in showing what the family is going through. And that was incredible. It was so well done. It was emotional for sure. And that definitely will sit with me for some time because it just makes a lot of things that are just wrong with our society, it makes it so real. And it makes it real in a way you understand what's happening. I definitely look up all the trigger warnings. There's a lot going on there that is really, really emotional. If you can handle that, if you can deal with that, I highly recommend you to read that. Man, woman, it doesn't matter. This book has a really important message, in my opinion, that more people need to understand. By the way, having said that, another little shameless plug, because we're talking about women and what women have to deal with, and I actually just recorded it. It's going live on Tuesday on Philip Chase's channel. A discussion together with Philip from Philip Chase's channel, Bryce from Shelf Centered, Ursi from Circe's Booked. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering this right now. I apologize. And Ben from Literature and Lofi. And we talked about female authors because Ben in February organized FebruarSheWrote, which was a month-long focus on female authors. And we just talked about what we read, what our favorite female authors are. And my credit card is burning right now because I bought so many of the books that they recommended. And we all agreed at the end, right? It is so important. And it's not to say like, hey, read female only. Not at all. But it is so important to keep saying like, look, there's so much more out there. And there's so much variety when it comes to reading and understanding what's going on in the world. Because all of these different authors bring different viewpoints and share something from their world with you that makes your world just brighter and better. And I just love the whole concept that Ben put together there. So that was originally my March TBR, but then I got sidetracked. I requested, it's more an art book at NetGalley. It's called The Dragon Universe, Volume 1. It's from various artists, and the main purpose of this book is illustrations of dragons. What I like about it, while it is mostly, the typical Western illustrations, fantasy illustrations that you know from, your 80s, 90s fantasy books, there's a great mix of whimsical, a little bit abstract. There are a couple of more Asian-inspired illustrations in there, and it's just throughout beautiful. It releases in May, if I'm not entirely mistaken, so it's not out yet. But I will definitely get a hardcover copy of that one as soon as it's out, because it's so beautiful. And I hope that the hardcover that comes out is like a really nice, those art books that are heavy and really nice paper and everything. Because it's just, I could see myself just sitting there and going through page by page and just looking at the pictures. Last book I promised that I talk about. The other book that I sneaked in is Cory Doctorow. It's Radicalized. It's 4 short stories. And the one that I'm currently reading is Unauthorized Bread. It's like, my husband told me about it and it's like, what now? What are you telling me about? That's the weirdest title ever. What is this about? And it's science fiction. And I did a little research about the author. So he writes about societal topics that are top of mind. And in this case, it's about IoT, or, that technology is everywhere. And you need, like in the printer, when you can only use the printer certified toner or the printer certified ink in order to print, you cannot buy like third party copied stuff. That's what this story is about, just for toasters and toast. And it's somehow that the company that created this toaster is belly up, and now no one can make toast anymore. Like, I have to read this. This is probably going to be awesome. Well, if you made it so far, thank you so much for stopping by, for still watching my videos, even though I'm only coming out with videos every other week. Thanks so much for watching. I hope your week is going to be amazing. That I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye.